Right, so I think we are live. One second, let me see if I can invite Belisa. The marvels of technology. Here we go. Right. So, hello Tom, hello Katie, hello Marlene, hello Jack, Mr. Jason Stott in the house, Mrs. Powditch, hello. So we're just waiting for Belisa to appear. Ah, here we go. She is here. Approve.
Hi.
Ah, hello.
How are you?
It's worked. Yeah, how are you? I'm good.
We made it. We made it.
3 times in one night as well.
Excellent. Let me turn you up a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
Good.
Can you hear me okay?
Okay. I can hear you. Hang on a sec. I'm going to turn you up a little bit more. There we go.
Brilliant.
Okay, good.
Well,
I can hear you great.
Thank you ever so much for doing this. I'm super excited. I'd love to say every week we have best-selling authors on our chosen subject on here, but we don't. It's the first one though, so who knows where this could lead.
Who knows?
Yeah. So very excited. So thanks ever so much again. Yeah. So you've worked with the likes of Bas Rutten and Henry Akins. I was going to come on to actually. I think maybe for some of the people on here who've only just downloaded the book Breathe and have just sort of started reading that, I thought I'd just sort of give a quick intro to how I became aware of you, because Henry Akins is pretty much, probably the most sought after jiu-jitsu instructor in the world right now. He's certainly right up there.
Yeah.
And he's under Rickson Gracie. He's one of Rickson's sort of famous black belts, and those guys in jiu-jitsu are like the breathing experts, really. So to get to sort of be invited there must have been a huge sort of honor, and that's how I became aware of you. So I was just wondering how that actually came about.
So Henry's the one who actually brought me out to Los Angeles, because I'm in New York and I was teaching almost exclusively on the East Coast. Henry, I'm not sure who exactly we met through, but he called me, said, how about coming out and teaching in Los Angeles? So I went out, I met him, and I was, honored to be able to work with him. And I was able to do an assessment on him and teach him as well.
Okay,
and
wow.
He was very humble, and he said, no, I'm thrilled, because now all the questions about Rickson's breathing I can send your way, because I get them all the time. I don't know what to say. And he's so humble because he actually knows a lot about breathing.
Yeah.
But I was able to teach him a lot as well, because it's all I know. And that's how I started teaching in Los Angeles, and really grew as far as being able to teach people about jiu-jitsu, even though I have to tell you that the first group to invite me was military, law enforcement, and fighters. So the first gym to invite me in, I thought it was going to be yogis or just kind of stressed out folks. And it was actually Gracie Thornwood in New York, BJJ, that invited me. So, having Henry call me wasn't that much of a surprise, because it was the BJJ community who had asked me to come in to begin with. So,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really incredible. So I should just say, actually, if anyone's got any questions, there's been a few things that people have sort of brought up to me in training and so on. But if anyone's got any questions because of the lags on here, if you can comment them, then please do now as soon as you can, and we'll try and answer some of those. We've got about half an hour, or had about half an hour, so I'll try and sort of keep an eye on the time. By all means, throw me off, Belisa, because I'm a terrible timekeeper. One of the things one of the things I wanted to ask you was how did you actually get into breathing? Because it sounds like you're not a jiu-jitsu person from originally, anyway.
Originally, no. And I grew up watching a lot of wrestling. And my brother practiced judo, and he's now rolls. But I watched a lot of wrestling growing up,
Right.
and in my house, my dad was the kind of guy who would always be putting his hands up and asking you to hit him,
Right.
either by tightening his belly or handing, on his hands. And we watched a lot of boxing in my house. So it wasn't, combat sports were something I loved anyway. And I did Muay Thai back in the 80s when no one knew what Muay Thai was.
Right.
So I definitely practiced, not jujitsu. But that's where, oops.
We seem to have paused for a second there. Can anyone else hear Belisa? Oh, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, that's going to happen. Oh no, now we have the delay.
No, I can hear you.
You're fine? Okay, I'll try to ignore my own voice. I think we're all good. So my background that's where my background came around, is that I was comfortable with combat sports. I love combat sports. You know what? We're going to have to click back on and off.
Yeah, no worries.
Super loud. Yeah, let's try it again.
I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, no.
It seems to have paused again now. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear us, Belisa. We can hear you fine.
I actually hear myself, but I'm having a little bit of trouble. I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I'm going to try to see if I can click off and click back on again.
Okay, no worries. We can hear you perfectly.
So just collect some questions. I'll be right back.
Okay. So we've got George is saying here, are there any tangible benefits to practicing breathing retentions? On the Joey Diaz podcast, you mentioned that if you benefit in practicing your exercises whilst wearing a BJJ belt to stimulate the constriction you feel. Okay, that's an interesting one. For some reason, Facebook's not letting me see the end of it. So I think part of the thing with this Facebook Live is we can do the split screen on phone, but then it doesn't seem to want to let us actually. I can't read the full one. Let me try and add Belisa back in again. Can you recommend any exercises to develop awareness? Aha, so here we go.
Hi. One day our kids will laugh at us that we had such, primitive technology. One day they'll laugh, but right now
we
we'll
can
just
hear
struggle.
you. I think Belisa, we can hear you. So
okay.
I think if you keep talking, I think maybe we're pausing on you or you're getting bad sound, but we can definitely hear you this end.
Okay, so great. Hit me with some questions. I saw somebody asking about tangible results. What was that?
Yeah, there's a few actually. So there was, I don't know if you want to pick that one up. Martin's also asking about, was curious about your thoughts on Wim Hof's breathing techniques.
Sure. So I don't see the questions, but at least on my screen, but Wim Hof does the ice baths, and it's been shown that for recovery, ice baths are really excellent. So I've done them as well as cryo. And I can't say I like them, but I know that they're good for me.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting that ice baths have made a comeback because they've been around for a really, I always say that ice baths have been around as long as we've had ice.
Right.
So it's kind of nice to see them coming back, and they're an inexpensive way to be able to have good recovery. I think it's important to see what you do in the ice bath. So do you muscle through it, or do you actually try to change the experience? And I think if it's something that stresses you out and you're using for recovery, you may want to think about it and not necessarily do it for that reason. But if it's something that you can actually overcome the discomfort of the ice and the pain of the cold and actually turn it into a different experience, then you're really getting the benefits of it. So that's my stance on ice baths. As far as the controlled hyperventilation that Wim Hof teaches, that goes back quite a long while. And in fact, if that's something that you guys are interested in, Stan Grof is sort of the father of controlled hyperventilation. He's a psychiatrist out of Seattle.
Stan Roth, did you say?
Yes, yes.
Stan Roth.
So he really made popular this idea of breath-led trance meditation.
Okay.
And it's called holotropic breathing. There are all sorts of breathing that are similar, that have been around for a very long time. Rebirthing, transformational, there's all sorts of them. So while I appreciate that Wim Hof has brought the attention to them, to maybe a population of people that would not have had access before, it's something we've been doing for a long time. I think we have to do it a little bit more carefully as well. I think that if you know that you have some anxiety or some unresolved things that you may need some support around, that throwing yourself into a controlled hyperventilation without some support can actually lead you to feel worse.
Okay.
So I like controlled hyperventilation, and I do teach it in my class, but I like it for a completely different reason. I like it because it actually works out your breathing muscles. So my perspective is very different in that I look at the biomechanics, physically, how are you breathing? Are you breathing up and down? Are you breathing out and in? What direction is your body going? And are you actually using the right muscles? So I come from the mechanical and the psychological standpoint.
Okay, that's super interesting. Miles was asking, so he was on earlier, so he's a Wim Hof instructor and studied it a lot. He's talking about what breath pattern is optimal to immediately prepare for a sprint, and what breath pattern, it doesn't give me the rest of it, but yeah, so basically it seems to be about what breath pattern is optimal immediately before a sprint.
Okay, so I'm actually going to answer that question in two ways. Is that people ask about breath patterns very often, and it's because they're tangible. Okay, and we've been talking about box breathing for a long time. The pattern I like is tactical breath. It's 4-4-6-2, and usually as long as the exhale is longer than the inhale, and it's a controlled breath, it's a good breath. So patterns per se, there isn't a secret pattern that's better one than the other, but it actually serves the purpose that it brings the attention to your breath and it makes you stretch it out over a longer period of time. So my question to you is, are you breathing mechanically in a good way rather than what breath pattern are you using? So I think you said Miles was asking about sprinting?
Yeah.
Okay, so for sprinting, I would just make sure that your breathing muscles are strong before you take the sprint. Usually with a very short, intense sprint, you're not really inhaling and exhaling a lot. That's with a much longer run that you're doing it. So with a sprint, you just want to make sure that you're well oxygenated before, that you're calm before the sprint, and that you can go very quickly. So there's no breath pattern per se, but all the literature, the sports literature that looks at endurance training, although a sprint is not endurance per se, tells you that you have to work your inspiratory, your inhale muscles and your exhale muscles in order to have better endurance. So whenever somebody asks me about patterns, I kind of try to redirect the question in that it's not really the pattern that's going to help you. It's making sure the mechanics of your breath is good and the strength of your muscles is strong.
And that links from in the book, that links to, I think, what you were talking about. Well, what I've always got from Rickson, and I think you talked about it in the book, was that, as you said, you've got to get it out rather than in. And that seemed, what I got from that was that it seemed to be because when you breathe in, your body can only process so much of the oxygen. And then because of that, then you've got to get actually all of the byproduct out. And that byproduct, unless you get that byproduct out, then you're limiting how much you can breathing anyway. That was what I got from it. And
sure.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's more or less it. And as you know, Rickson talks about the exhale being black gas.
Okay.
And when he said that, you know, it was a long time ago. And now we understand that carbon dioxide is not necessarily bad. It's not breathe in good, exhale bad. It's actually that we need to have a balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So the reason there is, you know, he does the 3 breaths, and a lot of coaches, smart coaches, will talk about the exhale, is because when you're rolling, when you're practicing, you will be in an in-between state where you take small breaths and you take small exhales. Certainly when you're fighting, you're not going to take a big inhale. You're certainly not going to take a big exhale and leave yourself vulnerable. You'll do that when you're in your corner. But if you're sparring, you're going to be in this in-between state where you're taking breaths when you can and you're exhaling when you can. So the short exhales, or really thinking about the exhale, is you taking that in-between breath that you've had, taking a step back, really exhaling hard, getting space for the next inhale. So that when you do inhale, you're taking a deep breath in. Too often you'll hear coaches say, inhale, breathe, breathe, inhale. And the fact is that if you haven't really exhaled, your inhale is not going to be good. So we should be saying exhale, exhale, which brings me to the second thing, which is that holding your breath, you know this, as you're fighting, you don't want to be holding your breath. It gets in the way of your movement. It gets in the way of everything. You're more apt to hold your breath on the inhale. So if you tell someone to exhale, they're going to exhale all the way out and then they'll inhale. And that's a fair amount of time of not holding your breath. That'll stop them from holding their breath and tightening up.
Okay. So are there any sort of hard and fast rules in terms of when you're rolling, of something that is just a good level to aim for, of exhalation time or anything like that?
When you're rolling, I mean, most of it is that you need to make sure, this is a sort of a big general kind of advanced comment, is that when you're breathing with your diaphragm, which is in the middle of your body, right, is that you can breathe in different directions. So you can breathe forward, you can breathe to the side, you can even breathe through your back, which we don't actually tell people how to do. We just say breathe through your back. So when you're using your diaphragm, it gives you the opportunity to be able to breathe in what a fighter that I work with named Smileno Rama, who's a PFL, talks about, and he actually coined this in quadrants. Now, when you're a vertical breather and you only feel the breath inhaling and exhale this way, this is the only way you can inhale. So think about it. If you're on the ground, and with jiu-jitsu you're on the ground a lot, is that you need to be able to know how to breathe sideways, the top part of your body, the bottom. You need to be able to breathe in lots of different directions, or else you're going to feel panicky or you're going to feel like you can't breathe. So breathing with your diaphragm is sort of the hard, fast. It's not a secret because we all know we have a diaphragm. We just don't know how to use it, which is where that measurement that I have in the book comes in, is that you want to look at how much is your middle expanding and contracting. So that is actually a good breather. And if you look at Rickson, he's very flexible and he's very strong as far as his thoracic cavity. He does not breathe up and down like most of us do, and he's very stretchy. So if you're going to do something for your breathing, you have to make sure your thoracic cavity, which holds your lungs, especially on the bottom, is very, very stretchy, is very flexible, so that you can inhale and exhale. And you want to make sure that you're using your diaphragm that goes, so that you have the choice to breathe in different directions.
Okay, brilliant. And is that, I've got a question from George here. He said, is that when, if you've obviously seen Rickson's method, going back to the question, is that what you call staged exhalations?
You know, Rickson, usually takes a lot of breathing from yoga. And I don't know if he actually knows how much yoga he has in his breathing, or if, I mean, he's such a natural talent that I think a lot of what he does is hard for him to put into words. But when I watch him breathe, what I see is exactly what I saw, is that what I just told you was that he has a remarkably flexible thoracic cavity, and he has strengthened his breathing muscles, breathing diaphragmatically using yoga techniques. I don't know the specific words staged breathing. That doesn't resonate with me in any way. It's, you know, right now people are using all kinds of words for breathing and making up their own words. And I have, in fact, because I have used methods or exercises that come from yoga, and depending on my audience, they may not want to hear Kapalabhati. So I will say, this is called Kapalabhati in yoga tradition. However, we're going to call it exhale pulsations for us, because that's what we're doing. We're pulsating and we're exhaling, although I will always reference where it came from. So I'm not familiar with that term, but I'd be happy to look it up and give you my thoughts on it.
Okay. So George was asking about breath retention exercises, which he was saying you don't seem to put as much emphasis on these. Is that
No.
correct? Okay.
No. So if you're interested in breath retention exercises, Rob Wilson, who actually rolls as well and is part of Art of Breath, does great exercises when it comes to breath retentions. I don't bring in breath holds until much, 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 much later, and only with fighters where holding your breath might be important. So I don't focus on that at all, although I have to tell you that if you are interested in apnea training, that Rob Wilson and Art of Breath does a fantastic job.
Okay.
The reason I don't use retentions, and retention is the yoga word, which I like, and all I teach does not come from yoga. I have to preface that, is that my interest in breathing came from my own experiences and the patients I was working with, because I'm a psychologist. But I started reading a book on Systema and their breathing, and then watching videos from people like Kevin Sekurs and Scott Sonnen, and then studying free diving and all kinds of sports science, sort of the academic part of it. So that's where my interest came in. And I've completely forgotten what the question was. So, yeah, where were we going with that? Help me out.
Okay, let's just move on to another question.
Retention.
We could look it back. I've got so many I'm trying to get through here.
Okay, no worries. But no, I think I remembered, which was retentions. Is I don't teach retentions because so many people hold their breath now as a bad pattern of breathing that I don't ask people to hold their breath. So
this is like the nose mouth thing you said about why you get.
So the nose mouth thing is a little bit different.
All right. Okay.
So the nose mouth is, are you using nasal breathing to breathe? And that's important, is that when you're training, and again, it all depends if you have a mouth guard or not, but when you're, say when you're running, you want to stay breathing through your nose, in and out through your nose. And then as the pace and the difficulty changes, you're going to change breathing in and out through your nose or through your mouth or whatever. Brian McKenzie calls it gears. If you are running and you want to run a lot and well and fast, at the end, you're going to be breathing both through your nose and through your mouth. So for that last sprint, you're going to be breathing both in and out through your nose. You'll notice that you have air coming in both and air going out of both. So the nasal mouth breathing is important. You should breathe through your nose as often as possible. But if you're fighting and you need to open your mouth and breathe in and out through your mouth, go ahead and do that. Again, it depends if you have a mouth guard or not, of course.
Okay. We've got a comment about Joey Diaz's podcast, Breathing Through the Balls.
Yes. So I have gone on Joey Diaz a few times. I adore him. He is a blue belt and he trains out of, he's in Los Angeles. And So breathing through your balls. So what that means is that.
What if you haven't got balls? Is it still the same? You just imagine?
It doesn't matter. It's okay.
However
it's
you
okay
identify.
whether you have balls or not.
Yeah.
So what that is that it actually is anatomically, it's very important. So I love that question. I love that we talk about it. So I think it's in chapter 9. You'll see I talk about pelvic floor. All right. So where your diaphragm is pretty much located between your nipples and your belly button, and it's a round, huge muscle that's in the middle of your body. Directly underneath it is your pelvic floor. So your pelvic floor is a group of about 20 muscles that you're sitting on top of. It's also called your bicycle seat. So it's that part of your body that hits the bicycle seat, and that's where the ball reference comes in. But if you're breathing well, you're actually supposed to be using both of them. So go ahead. I'm going to have you try this now. I can't tell if you're doing it.
I'm doing it all the time.
Yeah. Are you doing it all the time? Okay. So what I want you to do is on the inhale, don't move your shoulders, and everybody can try this, is on the inhale, don't move your shoulders, expand your middle. So give a big belly breath or a middle body breath, but I want you to relax your bicycle seat or your glutes, the whole pelvis part of your body. Now on the exhale, you're going to roll back, squeeze your belly, and you're actually going to squeeze your pelvic floor. So you're going to do what's called a Kegel. So you're going to take those muscles in your pelvic floor and squeeze them. So the squeeze is as if you're trying to stop urine or trying not to pass gas. That's the squeeze that I want. And now continue. Inhale, relax your belly, relax your pelvic floor. And I can tell by your eyebrows you're doing it, because usually people scrunch up their eyebrows and look slightly focused. And on the exhale, I want you to move your hips, squeeze your belly button closer to your spine, tip your hips underneath you, and squeeze your pelvic floor. So that is a breath that is actually anatomically a perfect breath. And what your pelvic floor is doing, I guess I can do this, is that on the inhale, it's relaxing, and on the exhale, you're squeezing it. Inhale, relaxing, exhale, squeezing it. And it's actually joined to your diaphragm. So this is what happens. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. And that's the way we're meant to breathe. We're not meant to breathe with our shoulders.
Okay, brilliant. Brilliant. And I was thinking about that in a lot of the time I'm trying to coach around pelvic tilt, I call it, but that movement, and it did seem to be like when you were talking in the book about opening, it's almost like you're trying to open up when you're breathing in, you're trying to sort of open everything up. And then it seems like you're sort of crunching and tilting the pelvis under on the breath as you've just described.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's called an anatomical breath. You have two different types of breath. You have an anatomical breath and you have a mechanical breath. So the anatomical breath is when you tip forwards, what we say is bump your butt back, you inhale, and then on the exhale, you curve back. So that's an inhale and exhale. And that's actually what's called an anatomical breath. You can do that sideways as well. And if you're advanced, you could do that through your back as well. But the tip of your pelvis is really important. And often lower back pain happens in good part, because we don't have that tilt. So if you're if you're someone who's interested in lower back pain, obviously Stuart McGill is the top person to see as far as lower back pain. But one of the things that happens is that we start breathing with our shoulders, and the hips don't get that rotation that actually helps them be healthy. So when you tip forwards, your lower back moves. When you tip back, your lower back moves. And if you're doing that with each breath, not only are you breathing in a more efficient way, but your lower back is getting the spinal fluid and the movement that it needs to be healthy.
Okay, that's fascinating. Miles is just asking, what's the quickest way to recover if you've gassed out but need to keep going during a match?
Okay, so during a match, what you need to think about is that you have the moments when you're fighting, and you can't think about your breath then. You should not be. If you find yourself thinking about your breath, you're in trouble. You have a step away where you might be able to take a breath without getting hit or without being in danger. Then you have a little bit further away where you might be out of distance, where you can take a deep breath, and then you have in your corner. So in each steps of those places, you can breathe in a different way. So it depends on how close you are to your opponent. Obviously, if you're very close and you're fighting, you're just going to take the air that you can, and you're only thinking about that moment. Okay. However, if you're a step away or 2 steps away, you can exhale all the way out, squeeze, and then take a big lower body breath. But you want to be careful that you're not too close to them, because they're going to see when you're inhaling and exhaling. Again, if you're breathing with the top of your shoulders, you're also telegraphing what's going on with you. So if you're fighting with someone who's seasoned, they will know what you're going to do by what your shoulders are doing. So if they see you inhale, they know a strike is coming or that something's coming in their direction. They also know when you've exhaled completely that you're at risk. Okay. So you have to gauge how you breathe by how close you are to your opponent.
Okay, that's fascinating. George is asking, in the book you talk about 2-part breathing where you breathe into the belly first and then the chest. Is this optimal breathing for yoga and BJJ rolling, or is it just a specific exercise to perform to strengthen the breathing apparatus?
Great question. So I love that you're asking questions about the book. You don't have to buy the book. You can share the book.
You should buy the book. You definitely should buy the book.
But ask me questions about it, because you have me here, and there's things in the book that are difficult to read about. And if you've gotten the audio, there is a PDF, but again, there's nothing, it's better to have me to ask. So the 2-part breath is part of that breath trance meditation. So what it is, the 2-part breath, and again, if you're doing it on your own, you should only do a short version of it. If you're doing a longer version where you're really sort of getting yourself riled up, you should make sure you have someone around and that you have someone you can ask questions to, because you can sort of go different places and it can actually be pretty trippy. Yeah. If you're doing it for the exercise and you're doing it short, the 2-part breath, you rock your body. So you're lying flat on the ground, you inhale, you puff up your belly, and you make sure that you do have a space at your lower back. Once you're completely full there, you're going to take a deep breath. Well, you're going to take a tiny breath, and as my assistant says, you're going to Titanic it. You're going to take a big belly breath and then push your shoulders back and take a tiny bit more of air. You should feel incredibly full right now. And then you exhale and completely flatten out. Inhale, inhale, exhale. So this type of breath-led meditation is good for you for a number of different reasons. One of them, which isn't talked about a lot, is that you're shaking your body. And there's a great book out there called Shaking Medicine, which is that we're braced all the time, which is partially why we've come to this problem with breathing, is that we're walking around with our middles bound either by muscles or emotion. So when you lie down and do that breath, you're actually having to relax your middle, and you're actually able to breathe with a lower body breath that supports your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. So when you take those 2 breaths, move your body. You don't want to have anybody walking in on you, because you really do look like you're doing some odd dance on the floor and they might call emergency services, but you do want to move your body. So it's therapeutic because you have to have that movement, but also because you're taking enormous big breaths in and you're squeezing and using your muscles. So on the inhale, you're using your diaphragm and your external intercostals. On the exhale, you're using your obliques, your abs, and your internal intercostals. So it's a pretty good workout. And as you get better, as your muscles get stronger, you'll see you're able to do it well for longer amounts of time. Okay. The meditation part to it is that after you've done this 2-part breath for, it could be 1 minute, it could be half an hour, depending on you, is that you will then relax. And I call it meditation for people that can't meditate, because you've done all this exercise lying down, and now your body calms and your brain has to follow. So with traditional meditation, your brain goes and your body, you have to focus to get yourself to sit still. So this was meditation sort of for dummies for me, because I couldn't actually get into a meditative state on my own. But if I did the breathing, my brain had to follow my body and I was able to do it. So you'll see when you calm down and stop breathing that you can just relax. Now, if you'd like to call it meditation, you can. It is meditation, but I've taught groups when I first started teaching, military and law enforcement didn't want to hear that they were doing meditation. So I just called it recovery breath because it was really good for your recovery. You get your cortisol down, endorphins come up, you get oxygenated, you relax, you do a muscle workout. So it is a good exercise to do for your recovery. However, you do get into a meditative state. So you should know that you're going to get tingly, you're going to get lightheaded. And if you want to set intentions or be spiritual about it, you can.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Andrew's asking, when you're doing the pelvic floor exercise, should you be able to sustain the contraction?
Yes, but not all the time. So your pelvic floor is healthy. And again, you have to remember, regardless whether you're man or woman or have balls or don't, is that your pelvic floor is 20 different muscles. So it's a huge part of your body. And keeping those muscles both strong and flexible are important. So I don't want you walking around squeezing your pelvic floor all the time. And in fact, a lot of pelvic floor dysfunction, and that means anything from pelvic pain to hemorrhoids and all kinds of things like that, is that come from a pelvic floor, not necessarily that's weak, but that's rigid. Okay. So you can sustain it, or you can just keep squeezing and do a lot of pulsations, but also make sure that it's flexible. Okay. What's nice in jiu-jitsu is that you squat a lot and you spend time on the floor and getting up and down. So in general, I would think that as far as sports go, jiu-jitsu probably has healthier pelvic floors than other sports.
I'd agree, for obvious reasons. So Martin was saying here, just relating to that, if you imagine the pelvis as a bowl, would the exhale tilt spill water out the back?
No, it's not tilting that much. So that's a good question. I know you're thinking, what the hell? But
I don't have a clue.
It's a bowl. Yes, it is a bowl. But yeah, when you tilt, it's only tilting a little bit.
Right. Okay.
Right. So when you tilt, the bowl comes forwards, your butt is going back. And when you're tilting the bowl this way, your butt is going underneath you.
Okay.
Okay. So right now, if you do cat-cow or cat-camel, that's the movement you'll have. The movement I'm interested in is not only this one, but it's this one.
Okay.
Okay.
Brilliant. George is asking, and this is sort of a question I want to ask as well, if you were to teach these breathing methods to children for focus and managing emotions, which one would you start with? He's asking as a primary school teacher who teaches 7 to 11-year-olds.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, so what's interesting is that everything that I'm teaching is something that we used to do completely naturally when we were 5 and a half. So if you look at it, for those of you that have kids, take a look at your kids. If you have a child under the age of 5 and a half, chances are they're breathing really well. They're breathing actually the way they should be, which looks a lot like, you know, your dog, your cat, whatever pet you have is breathing like your 5-year-old child. Now, the breathing changes between ages 5 and 6. And I did a study where I looked at 158 kids between the ages of 3 and 10 and found that exactly at the age 5 and a half, the breath changed from one that was perfect and horizontal to one that was vertical using auxiliary muscles.
Wow.
So what you're actually doing is that we're taking a breath that we used to do well and just unlearning what we had and dismantling. There's an author I really love, Donna Farhi. Donna Delory is Madonna's backup singer. Donna Farhi writes a book where she talks about dismantling bad breathing patterns. And that's what we're doing. We're taking this breath and going to a belly breath. Not because a belly breath is the perfect breath, but because we have to go from here to there to then be able to get a perfect abdominothoracic breath. So we're learning in steps. And again, my background is in child psychology. So I put together all this information in a way that we can learn it, that makes sense given the way we learn things. With children, it hasn't been that long that they've been breathing badly. So you can almost always tell them to take a belly breath and they will. So even if you have like 10 or 11 gets a little dicey because they start being very ashamed of their bellies. So I would put them on their backs and put something on their bellies, because that way you can't see it. And on the inhale, you actually have to push that thing away. And on the exhale, you let it fall. There is a book called The Belly Breath. It's on my website, and the download is 99 cents. And you can share that. You can put it on one iPad, and it's just to be able to show kids, this is how you breathe. And in that story, there's a little boy named Cameron, and he talks to his pets, and they breathe well, and he breathes well, and they talk about how his parents breathe so badly, and they take belly breaths. So if you're going to do one thing with your kids, put them on the floor and don't have them forget how to take a belly breath, because you wouldn't believe how many grown-ups I try to then get to expand and use their diaphragms, and it's really hard.
Okay. Are we all right time-wise, Belisa? Because I can't see the time on here, and I don't want to switch.
I can't either. Let's just keep going another 5 or 10 minutes.
So thank you very much. So Miles is asking, how much time do you need to oxygenate optimally to prepare for extreme output, i.e. wrestling, sprinting? And also, how would you do it?
Okay, so oxygenate. And here's where the whole concept of oxygenating is funny, is that there's no flooding of oxygen in your body. We're pretty much all at about 98, 99%. And you can actually get, it's called called an oximeter, and it'll show you that we're pretty much very well oxygenated already. If you have someone who's in their low 90s, there's a problem. They need to see a doctor. They probably need an oxygen tank, so on and so forth. So it's not that we're low on oxygen, you can oxygenate and then you can fight. It doesn't happen that way. We're already well oxygenated. We're just adaptive that way. So if you're going to prepare for something, what you should do, and there is at least one research study that shows that warming up your diaphragm and your breathing muscles is good. So taking some of those hard breaths and getting those muscles warmed up can actually be beneficial. But again, not to belabor this point, those muscles being strong are what's going to give you gas, or what's going to give you endurance. It's not so much oxygenating or doing a pattern or anything like that before. It's really making sure that the mechanics, the machine that you are is breathing in the right way that it was designed, and that those muscles are really strong. So the short answer to that is make sure you're breathing right, and make sure you warm up those muscles before you start, and that you're probably well oxygenated before you start. Just make sure that your breathing and your arousal is where you want it to be before you start. That you're not super amped up and taking small, shallow breaths, and you're not so calm and numbed out that you're not going to react quickly.
There's a question here that's really interesting. There's a question here from Michelle saying, I don't exercise, and to be fair, there's some of us on here who've become so technical at jiu-jitsu, it does feel like we're not getting the workout, but anyway. She was saying, should we be thinking about breathing for every day? So even if we're not exercising, should we be thinking about our breathing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. At least fix it so that you're doing it right. And I know that sounds funny. It sounds funny every time I say it, that we've gotten that broken and pathetic that we can't even breathe. But the fact is that in the last 40 years, because of technology and because of we sit so much, and because of screens and because of our weight, and because of stress, our breathing has really suffered. And a lot of the problems that come from bad breathing are the ripples of that. So the digestive problems we have, the back pain we have, maybe some of the low energy, some of the sleeping problems, they're really, your breathing connects to those very directly. So walking around every day, you should be breathing with your diaphragm. So you should be doing that for sports. But if you check your breathing, and is it Michelle?
Yes.
You said? Okay, so Michelle, just check your breathing. If you inhale and your shoulders move, then you're using these muscles to pick up your thoracic cavity and breathe. And not only is that exhausting, but it hurts your neck and shoulders, and it's just not an efficient breath. When you breathe lower body breath and you start with a belly breath, you inhale, you let yourself expand, even though that makes you feel really vulnerable and fat for a half second, I know. And on the exhale, you squeeze. That's actually a better breath for your entire body and your health in general. It also helps you have a stronger core. So even people I work with who have incredible abs and really strong core muscles is that if you breathe, inhale, expand, and exhale, squeeze, and you tolerate looking chubby for half a second, is that those muscles are actually going to get stronger when you breathe the way you were designed with a lower body breath.
And just to that point, I think the big thing, and it'd be interesting to hear any anecdotes you've got on this, personal or whatever, but I think the big point in this is that from those of us who've really tried to focus on this for jiu-jitsu, we've actually found it to be so much more useful in general life, in actual fact. So jiu-jitsu's delivered it to us. We've sort of realized, yeah, we need to get better at breathing. But the impact I think it can have in the corporate world, in personal relationships, just dealing with stress, anxiety, mental health, it seems that that's actually the much bigger picture of all of this.
I mean, I think so. Again, I started as a psychologist, and the people I was seeing was people that had anxiety. So what I realized is that we're talking about your anxiety, we're talking about it a lot over a long amount of time. So you have an intellectual understanding of why you have it, but what are we doing to translate it from your brain to your body? So when you say the breath is the mind-body connection, it actually is the mind-body connection. So you can understand that you are stressed out and you shouldn't be stressed out. But how is your body going to hear that? So it's going to hear that if you actually breathe in a way that you tell your nervous system to calm down. Now, the flip side of this works as well, which is that you can be in a terrifically stressed out situation, but you can be breathing in a way that tells your body to be calm, and it will respond in a calm way, even if stuff around you is blowing up. So when you take a lower body breath using your diaphragm, that actually is what stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. So we're talking a lot about vagus nerve and parasympathetic nervous system nowadays.
Sorry, could I just interrupt just on that, because this relates maybe to another question. So this is basically to do with, when you start talking about this, I think you're talking about this, I associate the vagus thing with the fight or flight mode and what's happening physiologically to breathing. Is that right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry, yeah.
So let's just take a step back, is that vagus means wanderer in Latin. That's the only Latin I know. But your vagus nerve sort of starts at the top of your head and it goes throughout your whole body. So when Glenn is breathing with his shoulders like this, okay, vagus nerve says, oh, there must be danger in the environment. Maybe if it's mild danger, but chronic, and maybe there isn't. You're just hanging out there on the couch, but you're breathing with your shoulders. So your body hears danger. Let me keep you slightly more alert than you need to be. Your heart rate is higher, your blood pressure is higher, and it's not the same for everyone. You might have someone whose blood pressure is terrible, but their heart rate is okay. But you're in the fight and flight mode. So how do you get out of it? And it's not, the lavender candles and the music is helpful for those of you that like that. However, you have to tell your nervous system that it's okay to calm down. So what's the opposite of fight and flight? Glenn?
I have no idea.
Exactly. So that's the point, is that all of us are, and I'm to blame as well, because I thought it was fight or flight. So this is my, obsessive type A personality, is that I thought you could fight or you could run. I didn't realize that you actually have a choice to do something else, which is half the reason I'm here anyway, is that you can actually be, and thank you, George, rest and digest. Rest and digest. So think about it. Think about the maladies that we have. Think about the problems that we have nowadays. Almost everyone is going to tell you they have acid reflux or constipation, and almost everyone is going to tell you, I can't sleep, I can't calm down. So rest and digest are two that we're not telling our body to be in that state. So it's listening. It's not in that state. It's in fight or flight. Now, as far as your nervous system, when you start breathing with your diaphragm, the lower part of your body, those nerves go down around your belly, and now your body can sense, right, that you're breathing with a lower body breath, you're breathing with your diaphragm, and now it goes, oh, okay, now we can be in rest and digest. Now it's a time to be here.
Okay.
So that translation from mind to body has to do with how are you breathing. That's part of the story. There's also the biochemical part of the story, and there's also the psychological part of the story. But if we're going to take sort of the biggest chunk, in my opinion, and address it, that's how you get yourself to calm down. So when I work with special forces or law enforcement or anyone who has to calm down quickly, you have to go to your corner and calm down in 30 seconds or a minute. How are you going to do it? Is that you're going to take a lower body breath. That's the fastest way to do it.
Okay, brilliant. And Katie's just asking about how she struggles to breathe through her nose when she's running. And is there any methods that she can use to overcome that?
Sure. So when you struggle to breathe through your nose, if you don't have allergies and you're not congested, is that your nose is this wonderful device. It is a breathing muscle trainer. So what's happening is that since your nostrils are smaller than your mouth, is that your breathing muscles have to work more and they're tiring. So that's what's happening. So what you need to do is work out your breathing muscles. That way you can stay in a nose breath longer. Now, if you're stuffed up, please, please, please do not get any sort of turbinate reduction surgery. I'm seeing terrible results with things that go awry with that surgery. There's something called empty nose syndrome. If you don't know about it, if you're thinking about getting nose surgery, please look into that. I won't go into details about it, but it is something you need to know about if you have breathing problems and have considered that.
Right.
Throughout the day, usually you will get stuffy on one side and the other, and that changes supposedly every 4 hours. It is good to actually open up your own nasal passages with your thumb or someone else's thumb if they let you. There is a little plastic gadget I like, and again, I don't get endorsed by anything right now. Anybody who wants to can endorse me, but I don't get endorsed by anything. I actually like this product just because of what it is, but it's called Mute. And there's these two little plastic circles and they fit inside your nose and they help open up your nasal passages. So I like those. But most of the time you can't stay in a nasal breath when you're working out is because your breathing muscles are weak.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Robin's just asking, before doing any physical activity, in anticipation of it, should you be slowing everything down or should you be trying to get everything going? Because he sees sort of both of the top-end athletes.
That's a great question. And, it's a myth that you need to slow everything down. And I'm sure you've seen this with fighters when they're too calm, when you sort of feel numb, you're too calm and you're trying to amp yourself up, or the opposite, you're nervous and you're trying to bring yourself down. So it is a really interesting dance of trying to stay within a certain level of arousal. You have to know yourself and know, oh, I'm too calm. I'm a little numbed out. I remember watching, this was an old, I don't know which UFC fight it was, but it was BJ Penn. And he got into the ring and I'm watching him and he was too calm. He was like, he looked almost numb. And I remember he never woke up. And you certainly wouldn't want to tell someone who's feeling that way or looking that way, oh, you need to calm down further. It's the exact opposite. You actually need to perk yourself up. So, yeah, it depends on what your body needs at that moment. Again, when I work with military or law enforcement that has to watch a house or a building, sometimes that's hours of sitting in a car watching a building. It's terrifically boring. It's nothing like TV shows, but you have to do breathing that wakes you up. Otherwise, you're drinking way too much coffee and super caffeinated, and then you can't go to sleep at the end of your shift.
Okay. And basically, Lee was just someone's actually just asked, how long can you hold your breath?
I am a decent breath holder, but I am not a fantastic breath holder. It's not something I train for.
Oh, God.
I can at least do a minute and a half, I think. I think the best time I've gotten for an exhale breath hold is 70 seconds, but I haven't been able to do it again. I do train people in breath holds that are free diving, and I've been able to get them over 4 minutes. But in general, your average person can hold for about 45 seconds. That also depends on how alkaline or how acidic you are. But again, I don't train people in breath holds, just because in general, breathing continuously is actually what I want folks doing, especially if they roll, especially if they have a sport where there's a movement and they need the breath to be able to pair their movement and their breath. But yeah, I have an okay breath hold, but you know, you definitely win if we were taking a breath hold together. Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't. I'm terrible. Would a deviated septum, and also people are talking about just basically nose injuries, adenoids, is this going to sort of hinder proper sort of nose technique? Should people be relying on mouth breath instead? What's your sort of take on things like deviated septums, adenoids, etc.?
You know, I would try that little piece of plastic that I talked about. It's called, again, I think it's called Mute, because it does, and I would also do nostril massage. I think it's called nostril massage, I don't know. But, you know, to actually go in and stretch your own nostrils. Primitive man had much bigger nostrils than we had. We're really sort of plagued by these narrow nostrils. So do what you can that's out of the ordinary. And if you do decide to get surgery, and most people who fight don't get surgery because you just may break your nose again. You just sort of wait until you're done fighting or whatever. But when you have to breathe through your mouth, breathe through your mouth. So if you're competing and you need to breathe through your mouth, or you're sprinting and you need to breathe through your mouth, do it. If you can't breathe through your mouth, the downside to that is that you don't get nitric oxide, which calms you down. You're breathing in air that may not be terrifically clean, and nowadays it's awful. You know, when you breathe through your mouth, it's not good for your gums, it's not good for your posture, it's not good for your jaw. I mean, is it the end of the world? No, it shouldn't cause you panic. If you can try to breathe through your nose, you should. I know for sleep, the combination of the nose things and the mouth tape works well, and people actually feel more rested when they can do that. So, and again, surgery for that might be good, but just don't get the turbinate surgery.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time, Belisa, because you've been so generous.
Yeah, let's take two more questions. Yeah.
Let me just scroll quickly back through. If anyone's got any more questions, fire them, because I've been reading through them and trying to sort of combine them where I can. Lee actually mentioned, are there any? Do you actually do any online examples of these? Because I've had everyone getting the book on Audible.
Sure.
So.
Audible has a PDF which you can download, and oh, I see Stephen. I want to be able to answer you. And the PDF shows the exercises pretty well, so just make sure you can find that PDF. Sometimes it's hard to find. And then whenever I do any articles, Jiu-Jitsu magazine about a year and a half ago did a really beautiful article where they showed all the exercises. I don't try to hide them or anything like that. You can actually find them in most things I do. So what's most important is that you try to get your body to expand on the inhale without using your shoulders. And it can take a little while because you've probably been squeezing the middle of your body in some way for a long time. And if you've been sitting like Glenn for a long time, like that's not good either, because you're in a terrible posture there. So not good breathing in that posture. But you want to just make sure that you're inhaling and expanding. And in the book, what I talk about, let me see if I have it here, is that you want to measure around the outside. So again, this is your household tape. I should probably make one and put my name on it and sell it for $29.99, but I haven't done that. So just take your grandmother's measuring tape, put it around your middle, inhale without using your shoulders, pop your belly, see what that inhale is, and then on the exhale, try to narrow. So once you've got that down, those are the mechanics, is that make sure you can do that. Big inhale, big exhale. And then the gadget I do like, and I'm not sponsored by, and I should probably get him to sponsor me, is I do like Bas Rutten's mouthpiece. So, but you need to make sure you have an A with your breathing IQ first, and then you can do things that are harder. You can do that 2-part breath. You can do the exhale pulsations. So focus on making sure that you're expanding and that you're contracting narrow first, and then add exercises to that.
Okay. Mrs. Powditch has just asked, my nutritionist says I have to walk for 15 minutes before I eat to walk off the fight or flight from the morning and get my body ready to digest food. Can I shorten this with breathing and avoid having to go out for a walk?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So most of the time doctors tell you to walk. I mean, it's good for cardiovascular, but you can calm yourself down. So what I would say is look to see after you've walked, I mean, and I'm guessing she means stroll, is that how do you feel? What's your blood pressure? What's your heart rate? And get your body there with the breath, because what the nutritionist seems to be saying is you need to be in a calmer state before you start eating. So most people nowadays will start eating and just eat as quickly as they've been doing everything else. There's a great study that shows that we walk faster than we ever have before. And I believe that we, you know, when we're going from one place to another, it was a study that was done in Singapore, and I know New Yorkers are still bolting wherever they're going. I'm sure we're racing fast. We want to do everything faster. But I'm sure with eating that we are not eating at the rate we're supposed to. I'm sure that we are eating way too fast, and that's causing a lot of acid reflux and a lot of digestive problems. So I'm not going to say you don't need to go for the walk, but a way to get your body into rest and digest is that lower body breath. Inhale, expand, exhale, squeeze. You slow that down, and then your body is in rest and digest, which is pretty much the time when it's ready to eat and be happy about it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. And George has just obviously got his pajamas on, and he's saying, what would your ideal bedtime breathing routine be to prepare for optimal sleep?
I mean, there's sleep hygiene, which sounds awful. It's a terrible word, but if you're going to go to sleep, you have to make sure you turn all your gadgets and all these crazy lights off beforehand. You have to make sure your room does not have any little lights on it. You have to make sure your room is cool and black. But you also have to make sure that you are calmed down. So when you're lying down is the easiest time to take a belly breath. So what I would do is, and they actually have a count on the PDF of the book, is that you lie in bed after you've done all these things and calm down. And earplugs are fantastic. I'm a big believer of earplugs. Put your hand on your belly and start inhaling to the count of 4 and exhaling to the count of 4, and try slowing it down.
Okay.
Slowing it down. So the count, again, is not as important as just listen to the sound of your breath. So listen to the inhale, listen to the exhale, and it will calm you down. Just the sound of your own breath, inhaling and exhaling and trying to slow it down, should actually put you to sleep.
Okay. Miles, this is the best question. What is the least amount of breath work we can do to improve our cardio without actually doing any cardio exercise?
Great question. You don't have to do any cardio. So I shouldn't say this publicly. I don't love cardio at all. In fact, if I could get away with not doing cardio, I would. But you can work out your breathing muscles, and it can help your endurance and your conditioning. So for instance, when you're injured, and you know this happens often with us, is that we get injured, we can't move, we get depressed. Endorphins go down, serotonin goes down, you start thinking you're missing out, you feel like your endurance is getting worse. You can actually do breathing exercises when you're injured, be healing at the same time, be in your hospital bed, and be keeping your endurance and your conditioning up. So if you're doing hard breathing exercises, I'm not going to say it can take the place of cardio, but it's just as important. And you know,
you're kind of saying it can.
Huh?
You're kind of saying it can.
I'm kind of saying that it's just as important, if not more important. Yeah.
I know what you're saying to me. I'm not going to be doing any cardio.
So what I would do is take a measurement of an endurance measurement for you. So it could be a number when you're rowing. It could be a number for your 3K, but get a measurement for your endurance. Do breathing exercises as hard as you can for 2 weeks, and then take that measurement again. And it's going to move without you having changed your cardio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well,
Yeah.
that's been incredible. Thank you ever so much. So in terms of
Thank you.
so no, I really appreciate it. It's been amazing. It's really mind blowing. So in terms of like what you've got out there, so you've got the Breathe Audible book. Have you got any other products at all that we should be looking at? I know you've talked about the Warrior Fight as well.
Yeah, the Warrior book isn't coming out until next year, which is what's tough about publishing, is that it's always a year in advance, which makes me nervous because I like being up on research. So I'm just nervous about the fact this is going to come out and not have the last year of research. The folks that have a good amount of breathing videos are called NEOU, N-E-O-U.
Okay.
And they give you a free subscription for a week. So get on, watch them for a week, and then you can get off there. The State app is really good as well. I like that for breathing. It helps with your pacing. And the kids book is up. It's 99 cents for your iPad. And I have a teacher training coming up in New York in October. If anybody wants to get certified, it's an intensive 4-day class. You get continuing education credits and get to learn how to teach breathing.
Is that on your website?
Everything's on the website.
Okay,
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and what is it you do with the fighters, where you do the seminar sessions, like the thing with Henry? Is that called Warrior Fight? Or I can't.
That's the Warrior. Yeah, that's the Warrior class. So I do the general introduction class, which is a lot of what we covered today. My brother, whose name is Dr. Alexi, and Chris Burns out of 0 Point Jiu-Jitsu in Melbourne, they teach the Warrior class.
Okay.
So if you want to look either of them up, Chris Burns is at 0 Point Jiu-Jitsu in Melbourne. My brother is Dr. Alexi. Alexi's the Russian spelling, A-L-E-X-E-I.
Okay.
He's now in Lima teaching high altitude breathing, and he rolls as well. Yeah, they teach the Warrior class. Yeah.
Fantastic. Sorry, super last. Everyone's saying that was just amazing. So thanks so much for that. It's like everyone's been blown away by it. Marlene's just asked, what was the name of that kid's book again, please?
The Belly Breath.
The Belly Breath. Yeah,
everything of mine is super easy just because I'm not good at making up fancy names. So it's just the Belly Breath. It's on the website. And
yeah, we've got some latency. Might just call it a day there and coming on, and thanks for all the amazing questions. I think that's Belisa gone. So cheers everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for attending. Cheers. Bye.